How can you take a story titled after an undead woman and make it less horrible than it sounds? Easy. Give it to Tim Burton. The Corpse Bride. Yes. Oh god, what do I say about this movie? It's a story about a man who accidentally marries a dead woman. This should be the most disgusting, horrible animated film ever, and no one would want to see it, including myself. But I did, years ago, though it was on DVD, which I got for my 10th birthday after I came home from school. I remember going to my brother's room, he had a DVD player and I didn't, and I watched it before the party started. And while the party was going on, all I could think of was how I wanted it to end so I could go and watch the movie again. Yeah, you heard me. I love this movie. I could say it's my favourite Tim Burton movie next to Nightmare Before Christmas. And no, I can't choose between the pair, so please don't ask me to. But I will say this is one of my favourite animated films, maybe not top 10, but definitely in the top 20. Now, is it a perfect film? No, of course not, but we'll talk about that as we go along. So the story here is about a young man called Victor, who's from a nouveau riche family, who has been put into an arranged marriage to Victoria, whose family, despite being nobles, have no money. They don't think they're going to get along at first, but after meeting one another, they realise they might actually want this. But there's a spanner in the works in the form of the Corpse Bride, who Victor accidentally marries. Don't ask. So Victor needs to find a way to break the marriage, get back to Victoria, and do it quick before she marries the suave but suspicious Lord Barkis. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. The fact that this is a story about a man accidentally marrying what's basically a zombie. Now, this should be really gross and creepy, and the trailers really didn't help, making this look more like a horror film more than anything. But what Burton and his team have done is take this potentially horrible gothic story, and they told it in a way that it's more like a fairy tale, a fantasy. Fairy tales themselves were pretty morbid in their first conception, so this doesn't feel too out of place. It's sort of a boy meets girl, Romeo and Juliet, love triangle, Beauty and the Beast sort of story. It really does feel like something that came out of a fairy tale, despite the initial concept. If I had to describe the story in one word, it would be sweet. This movie is very, very sweet. There are a lot of very gentle, very quiet moments where it just involves two characters talking. And I guarantee there will be moments that will make you smile.
Scraps! My dog Scraps! Oh, Scraps, what a good boy.
I knew you'd be happy to see him.
Who's my good boy? Sit. Sit, Scraps. Sit. Good boy, Scraps. Roll over. Roll over. Good boy, Scraps.
There are lots of little moments like this, which is not what you'd expect from a movie called The Corpse Bride. Now, that's not to say this film doesn't have its moments of intensity, and there are some genuinely creepy moments, mostly involving the bride herself, as well as the other undead. Also, this is one of the few animated films that actually managed to scare me with a jump scare when I was a kid. Yeah, a jump scare. A bloody jump scare. I mean, really, that's quite an achievement. So it's very interesting in the way the story is told, like a fairy tale, but it's not letting go of its gothic undertones. And also, believe it or not, this is the movie that taught me what nouveau riche meant. Yes, this movie, and what a dowry was and how marriage worked back in those times. It's interesting. A lot of kids might find that pretty confusing though, so yeah, parents may have to explain that. But if you know a little bit about the Victorian period, then you might know this already. Though, the one thing I don't like about the story is that, well, it does have a twist, but unfortunately any film-savvy viewer can see it coming from a mile away. I won't say what it is, but if you watch the film, you may be able to figure it out. Now, first time watching this as a 10-year-old, I didn't get it, but now that I'm 20, I can see why it might be more obvious to people, so just keep that in mind if you watch this movie. But besides the twist, everything else in the story is creepy, surprisingly sweet, and also quite funny. There's actually quite a few good jokes throughout this, and a lot of puns. They're primarily background gags, and they're not often said, except for maybe one or two. And I don't normally like puns, but I actually really like these, and it did get a laugh out of me occasionally.
Please, Elder Goodness.
Now, why go up there when people are dying to get down here?
Like I said, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I will say this. This film has one of the most satisfying yet bittersweet endings I've ever seen. And I'm not going to lie, I do get a little bit misty-eyed at it.
Aww.
Ah, shut up. I'm not made of stone. The music? Incredible. It's Danny Elfman, and these are some of his best songs, going through a few different styles, but all ending up sounding great. The use of the piano was great, and not just the score, but also in the story. There's a scene which I can only describe as two characters having an emotional conversation through piano notes. There's almost no words from the characters, and it's not a long scene at all, not even 2 minutes, but it tells a lot. And it's a clever callback to the first part of the film where Victoria and Victor meet at a piano, and they have their awkward but still very sweet introduction to each other. Moving on to the animation, the only word I can describe it is, like the music, incredible. This is one of Burton's best looking films to date. See, this is what I was talking about in my Igor review. Yes, some of the characters are disproportioned, but having it stop motion and in the classic Tim Burton style, it really works to its advantage. Every character has their own walking animation, style and mannerisms. The use of colour is also amazing, and having the world of the living be dreary, depressing and dead, whereas the world of the dead is very colourful, vibrant and lively, which is a fantastic idea. The animation is very smooth and creative, and the use of lighting is also brilliant, which is an achievement in itself, as lighting is very difficult to achieve in stop motion, and they do have some very intense colouring in this, especially during the song Remains of the Day, and several moments during the climax. Also, this is the only film I can think of where they can take an undead, rotting corpse of a woman and actually make her look quite pretty. This movie is dripping in gothic atmosphere, especially in the colouring of the land of the living, which complements the music, the angles, and the lighting perfectly, creating some very genuinely creepy moments, especially when it does involve the corpse bride or the undead. Actually, just out of politeness, I'm going to refer to the bride as Emily from now on, since that is her name, even though that's only mentioned 4 times in the movie. And if you can find those 4 times, I'll give you a virtual cookie, I don't know. One thing I have to mention is that Victoria's father, who also already has a pretty funny walk, has what has to be the most hilarious running animation ever. That just cracks me up, I don't know why. Moving on to the characters, this is when I can feel a little bit mixed. I like them all, don't get me wrong, but I do find some of them weaker than others. Victor, the main character, is a bit of a blank slate. He's a shy, kind of nervous man who does grow a backbone as the film goes on, and he is genuinely likeable, which helps that he's voiced by Johnny Depp, who does a great job despite this not being his usual role. But in a way, this is not a bad thing because he has a similar role to, say, Alice from Alice in Wonderland. He's the everyman and the audience surrogate who's to soak up the madness along with him. But he is still very likeable, and you do want to see him with the right woman. Speaking of women, Victoria is very similar to Victor, even in their name. She's timid, kind, but she does get her feelings across and does try to help herself and Victor, even though there really isn't much she can do. And she does get a few badass lines in this. The gentleness of the main leads is welcoming because, well, any other living character besides them is either selfish, corrupt, or only cares about money. Though this mostly applies to Victoria's parents, Victor's parents are not quite as bad, especially the father, but it does actually lead to some funny lines from Victor's mum.
It cannot be.
Did he say corpse?
Oh, don't be ridiculous. What corpse would marry our Victor? Oh!
But my favourite character has to be Emily herself, who's probably the strongest character in this. The team did a fantastic job bringing her character to life, pun fully intended, and the mix of her design, her personality, her backstory, and Helena Bonham Carter's performance really makes her shine. She's cheerful, charismatic, and kind, but she's still very sympathetic, which is not what the trailers depicted her as. No, really, the trailers were really not kind to this character. She does have a genuinely creepy moments with her being, well, a corpse, so that does all balance out. She was murdered on her wedding night, and all she really wants now is just to feel loved, and you can really sympathise with her in her situation, even though she does not always want to acknowledge the fact that her husband is still alive, because that would take him away from her. Whether or not you agree with how she acts, you do understand where these feelings and actions are coming from, and that's what creates good drama and a good character. Emily is my favourite Tim Burton character next to Edward Scissorhands, and that's saying a lot. Now looking at Lord Barkis, I can't say too much about this guy, but what I can say that, unfortunately, he's a pretty boring villain. Again, I can't say much, but when you watch the film, you'll understand what I mean. Although I do like how he just appears in the scenes he's in. You never see him walk in, he just appears, like he's waiting for his moment. That's pretty cool. But it's a shame that's the only really cool thing about him. One thing I should mention is that this movie has a great cast. Johnny Depp, Emily Watson, Helena Bonham Carter, Tracy Ullman, Richard E. Grant, Christopher Lee, and a lot more. And they do fantastic with these characters. Oh, yeah, and before I forget, there's this wee maid character in this, and... she sounds like this. Oh, come sit by the fire, dearie. You're shaking like a leaf. There, I said it. Most of you probably won't know what I'm talking about, but trust me, someone is going to want to kill me if I don't acknowledge this. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I really don't know what else to say about this film. It's just great. It has its setbacks, but so does every movie, and it's not enough to hinder my overall enjoyment of this film. I highly recommend this movie if you're a Tim Burton fan, or if you're just a fan of animation. It's gothic, it's sweet, it's creepy, it's gentle, and it's great. It definitely puts the fun in Funeral. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day. Thanks guys. Cheers.